My name is Emily Thompson, and at 29, I thought I had finally made it. Not the flashy Instagram millionaire by 30 version everyone scrolls past, but the quiet, hard-earned kind that actually lasts. 7 years of double shifts in logistics, tracking pallets of produce that always seem to end up in the wrong city, skipping vacations, living on ramen and black coffee. And I finally stood on the porch of my own two-bedroom ranch in Oakwood Grove, HOA. The siding needed pressure washing. The front yard looked like the previous owners had surrendered around 2015. But to me, it was freedom. No more landlords raising rent on a whim. No more asking permission to paint a wall. Or so I believed. The community seemed peaceful enough on paper. Manicured lawns, white picket fences, the usual HOA welcome packet full of covenants about harmonious aesthetics. I laughed when I read the color restrictions. Approved neutrals only. Sage green was my calm. I painted the bedroom that exact shade the first weekend, the one that made me exhale for the first time in years. I haunted estate sales, filled the place with secondhand furniture that had stories, adopted a grumpy tabby named Milo who claimed the windowsill like it was his throne. Work friends noticed the difference. Nina, my inventory manager and closest ally, said over lunch, "You walk different now, like you're not apologizing for existing." She was right. Roots. Finally, Tuesday started like any other nightmare shipment day. 3 pallets of dairy rerouted to Des Moines instead of Milwaukee. My head was splitting by noon. My manager sent me home early. I remember glancing at my phone, 2:47 p.m., and thinking a long bath and that unread book on the nightstand sounded perfect. Then I saw the white contractor van at the curb. No logo. My stomach did a slow flip. Henderson next door had been remodeling forever. So maybe, but the voices inside my house were wrong. Male voices. Classic rock radio. Paint fumes hit me before I even turned the knob. I pushed the door open. 2 men in splattered coveralls were rolling primer white over my sage green walls. Stroke after stroke, erasing the color I had chosen for myself. "What the hell are you doing?" The words came out sharp, fueled by pure shock. The younger guy nearly dropped his roller. "Are you the homeowner?" "Yes." "And you're in my house, painting my walls without my permission." The older one set his roller down carefully. "Ma'am, we have a work order." The lady who hired us said she was HOA president. Said the board approved an emergency update for covenant compliance. My blood turned to ice. Of course. Susan Harrington, the woman everyone called Karen behind her back, president of the Oakwood Grove HOA board. She appeared in the doorway wearing designer jeans and that practiced smile that never reached her eyes. "Oh, Emily, you're home early. Surprise. I know how busy you are with work. So the board and I thought we'd help bring the place up to standard. That green is just so depressing. We're going with a nice neutral beige. Much more appealing for property values." Appealing for what? I like the green. I chose the green. This was my house. Her laugh sounded like breaking glass. "Don't be dramatic, dear. We're all one big happy HOA family here. This is what neighbors do. We look out for each other. Besides, Derek and I are having some temporary housing issues, and we thought the spare room could match once we updated." The words landed like ice water. "Excuse me? Well, we can't all afford empty bedrooms," she continued, tone sharpening. "Some of us have children to think about. But don't worry, we'll chip in on utilities." Win-win. The workers were already packing up, eyes on the floor, clearly uncomfortable with the HOA drama exploding in real time. Susan crossed her arms. "I don't understand why you're being so selfish. After everything I did for you during move-in." The laugh that escaped me was bitter. "You mean the 2 hours you helped while mostly critiquing my choices and borrowing my keys for your car?" Her face flushed. "I took time out of my busy schedule to welcome you to the community. I even made sure the board knew you were moving in. And this is how you repay the neighborhood. I felt the violation in my bones. Susan, you can't just repaint my bedroom. You can't decide my house needs updating because it offends your beige religion. Get out. She sniffed. Derek, said you'd react like this. That the house went to your head. But you're still just a new girl who needed community help. You clearly don't understand how things work here. She dug through her purse, pulled out a key on a rhinestone chain, my key, and slammed it on the counter. Fine. When you're sitting alone in your precious rule-breaking house, don't come crying to the board. Community is supposed to stick together. The door slammed. I sank onto the plastic-covered bed, primer fumes burning my eyes, watching my sage green bleed through the white in ugly patches. Susan was wrong. I hadn't lost anything real. What I had lost was the illusion that the HOA was anything but a mini dictatorship wearing a smile. And standing in my vandalized sanctuary, I realized that was a loss I could live with. The next few weeks were supposed to be peaceful. I hired different painters to restore the sage green, changed every lock, installed a chain, and tried to pretend the whole thing was a bad dream. But Susan Harrington had other plans. It started small, the way these HOA Karens always do, just being neighborly. She showed up unannounced with store-bought cookies and that same fake smile, talking about how the community should forgive minor misunderstandings. When I politely declined to let her in, she left the cookies on the porch with a note. I'll wait until you come to your senses about the bylaws. Then came the casseroles. Dishes appeared on my doorstep with passive-aggressive notes about worried you're not eating right with that stressful job. Once I found a cooler full of groceries, the exact brands I buy, which meant she had been watching my shopping habits. To any outsider, it looked caring. To me, it looked like establishing a presence, creating obligations. The weekend drive-bys were worse. She and Derek would park across the street with their 2 kids, not approaching, just sitting there for an hour, sometimes longer. When neighbors asked, she'd say she was checking on the new homeowner who lives alone. Mrs. Henderson next door even commented how sweet it was that the HOA president cared so much. 3 weeks after the painting incident, things escalated. I came home from a brutal shift to find my spice rack completely reorganized, not tidied, rearranged according to some system that only made sense to Susan. My stomach dropped. She had been inside again. I checked every window, the back door, the garage, all locked. Yet somehow she had entered. The next morning, my bank statements had been moved. One was missing, the one showing my mortgage imbalances. Nothing stolen, just violated. Nina listened over lunch. Face serious. This is beyond pushy neighbor stuff. This is stalking with HOA flavor. I protested weakly. She's just the president. Nina's look could cut glass. Listen to yourself. She forged a board work order, hired painters while you were gone, copied your key during move-in help, and now she's inside after you change locks. Get cameras. Get a lawyer who knows HOA law. The pattern continued. A book moved from coffee table to shelf. Mail sorted differently. Once I found a framed photo of Susan, Derek, and their kids tucked into my fridge magnets, a picture I had never seen, certainly never placed there myself. Derek started leaving voicemails at work. Susan's just trying to help you fit in. What if something happens and no one's there? At least if we were monitoring the property for compliance, the subtext was clear. Let us control your house or we'll make your life hell. One evening, I was making dinner when I heard a key in the lock. My blood froze. I had changed everything. Yet someone was trying. I grabbed my phone, ready for 911, but the attempt stopped. Through the peephole, I saw Susan walking away, shoving something into her purse. Of course, she had made multiple copies. Why stop at one? The next day, I added deadbolts that couldn't be picked and a chain for when I was home. But the damage to my piece was done. I started photographing every room before leaving, documenting like a paranoid detective. Nina noticed the toll. You're losing weight. When's the last time you slept? I insisted I was fine, but we both knew it was a lie. I was living like a prisoner in my own home, always waiting for the next invasion. That's when she slid a business card across the table. Marcus Campbell specializes in HOA disputes and harassment. And this keychain, boundaries engraved on it, is to remind you that protecting your space isn't selfish. It's necessary. I fingered the bronze. The word catching the light. Growing up with chaos after my parents died, I had learned to be flexible, grateful, but gratitude had been weaponized against me long enough. The very next day, my bank called. Someone had tried to add themselves as an authorized user on my account. The name, Susan Harrington. The attempt failed because they transposed 2 digits of my social security number. But they had almost everything else right. Address, mother's maiden name, everything Susan could have photographed during her visits. I drove to the bank shaking. The manager confirmed. Usually it's someone close with access to documents. I thought of every unsupervised minute Susan had spent in my house. What else had she copied? That evening I sat with Marcus Campbell in his office, laying out the entire saga, the forged work order, the hidden keys, the attempted identity theft. He listened, expression growing grim. This is textbook escalation. Started with boundary violations disguised as HOA enforcement. Moved to criminal trespass. Now financial fraud. The fact that she's using her board position makes it worse. She's abusing public trust. He leaned forward. Document everything. We're filing for an emergency restraining order and pursuing criminal charges. And Emily, install a safe for your papers tonight. I left feeling both relieved and heartbroken. My sage green sanctuary had been poisoned. But for the first time, I wasn't fighting alone. The boundaries keychain sat heavy in my pocket. A small bronze promise that I was done apologizing for taking up space. The morning after meeting Marcus, I did a full security sweep. I found 2 more hide-a-key boxes, one under a fake rock in the garden, another magnetically stuck under my porch chair. The premeditation made me sick. I photographed everything, then drove to the hardware store and bought new locks, window bars, motion lights for every corner. The elderly clerk raised an eyebrow, but threw in a personal alarm for free. Just in case. Mrs. Henderson wandered over while I was installing. That HOA president was by earlier, she said casually. Said she was worried about you. Asked if I'd seen you today. My hands tightened on the screwdriver. What did you tell her? That it wasn't my business to track neighbors. She smiled dryly. She didn't like that. My sister was like her once. Always thought she knew best. Had to get a restraining order eventually. Family, or in your case community, can be the worst because they think the rules give them rights they don't have. I established new routines. Vary my route home. Check footage every morning and night. Nina noticed. You're living in fear in your own home. That's exactly what she wants. She was right. That's when the 3 a.m. alert hit. Motion at the back door. Heart hammering. I pulled up the feed. There was Derek in a hoodie, trying the handle, then testing the window. I recorded. Called 911. Voice steady. Attempted break-in in progress. I have video. Sirens approaching made him bolt over the fence. When police arrived, I showed them the clear footage of Derek's face. That's the HOA president's husband, I said. Officer Bradley took notes. We'll need you at the station tomorrow. This plus the identity theft attempt is a pattern. After they left, I clutched the boundaries keychain like a lifeline. I wasn't the one crossing lines. They were. The next morning, I sat across from Marcus again. I laid out every detail, showed the footage. His expression hardened. Textbook. We're filing the emergency restraining order today. Criminal charges for trespass. Forgery of board documents. Attempted identity theft. They'll be served tomorrow, 100 yards away from you. Your house. Your work. I mentioned the kids. Marcus softened. They made these choices knowing they had children. You're not responsible for their consequences. That afternoon, the order was granted. Temporary. Hearing in 2 weeks for permanent. Susan and Derek would be served in the morning. I should have felt safer. Instead, I felt a storm coming. Nina insisted I stay at her place for a few nights. I was packing when my manager appeared. Someone here to see you. Says she's the HOA president. My blood ran cold. Security was called, but Susan's voice already echoed down the hall. I know she's here. This is a community emergency. She burst around the corner. Hair wild. Makeup smeared. Screaming. You call the police on Derek? Your own neighborhood president's husband? He could go to jail. Security flanked her, but she kept shouting. You think you're better than the rest of us with your little house and your stable job. But you're nothing. Emily, we welcomed you. And this is how you repay the community? That house should be compliant. We have children. What kind of monster calls the police on neighbors? The entire office watched. Nina stepped between us. The kind who's been harassed, stalked, and had forged HOA orders used against her. The kind who's documented everything for lawyers. Now get out before we add workplace harassment to the charges. Susan's face went white at the word lawyers. Security finally dragged her out, still screaming threats of lawsuits, neighborhood boycotts, social ruin. My manager sent me home for the day. As Nina and I walked to the parking lot, Susan's car was still there. She was on the phone, gesturing wildly, rallying whoever would listen to her version. That evening, Marcus called. The restraining order was served. They can't come near you. Violation means immediate arrest. Nina raised her wine glass. To boundaries. We clinked. But I knew paper wouldn't stop Susan. She had spent years believing her position gave her ownership over everyone's lives. The real fight was just beginning. The rain started at 4 that afternoon, turning the Milwaukee suburb gray and miserable. I had been at Nina's 3 days while the order was served. Marcus confirmed Susan and Derek had been notified. I should have felt relief. Instead, I felt like I was waiting for lightning to strike. Nina was at the store when my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. A child's voice. Thin and scared. Aunt Emily? It's Megan. I'm scared. Mom and Dad are acting weird. They said we have to go somewhere tonight, but won't say where. Mom's crying and packing bags. Before I could respond, I heard Susan in the background. Megan, who are you talking to? The line went dead. 20 minutes later, Nina's doorbell rang. No one there. But 2 large duffel bags sat on the step, my bags from the basement, filled with winter clothes. A note in Susan's dramatic handwriting. You want to be alone so badly? Fine. But community takes care of community. If you won't help us, we'll help ourselves. Check your precious house. I called Marcus, then police, then raced over. 2 cruisers were already there, lights flashing in the rain. Officer Bradley met me. Your HOA president and family are inside. They claim they're moving in because they're being evicted and have nowhere else to go. I sputtered. There's a restraining order. They claimed they arrived before it was served. Have been staying for days with my permission. Through the window, I saw Susan gesturing dramatically. Derek lounging on my couch like he owned it. Kids in pajamas looking terrified. Susan had produced mail addressed to her at my house. Recent mail. Obviously fraudulently forwarded. Marcus arrived, briefcase in hand, and calmly laid out the evidence. Restraining order. Security footage showing only illegal entries. Documented forgeries. Neighbors gathered. Mrs. Henderson spoke loud enough for the officers to hear. I saw them arrive 2 hours ago with bags. They haven't been living here. I would have seen. Other neighbors confirmed. The tide turned. Susan grabbed Megan's arm, using her own daughter as a shield. The little girl's tears broke me. I pushed inside. Megan, Sweetie, come here. Susan hissed. You did this to us. I looked at the officers. These children shouldn't be part of their parents' crimes. Marcus stepped in. Using minors to avoid lawful removal is itself a crime. Contact Child Protective Services. Travis lunged. Had to be restrained. Susan dissolved into hysterics. Within an hour, both were in handcuffs for criminal trespass and violating the restraining order. The kids went to Susan's mother, who was horrified and promised stability. As police cars pulled away, I stood in my violated home again. Furniture moved, belongings scattered, the same entitled assumption that my space was theirs. Nina arrived with co-workers. We'll help you clean. We worked in the rain, reclaiming my sanctuary. I thought of Megan's scared voice. The real victims were the kids caught between parents who couldn't accept boundaries. But as I looked at my friends helping me, I realized real community respects your no. It doesn't try to bulldoze it with forged HOA orders. The knock came at 8:17 a.m., 3 days after the arrest. Through the peephole, I saw two unfamiliar officers. My stomach sank. Sergeant Mills said, "We need to ask you some questions about allegations made against you." Susan had filed a report claiming I stole money from a fictional HOA community fund and had been abusing elderly neighbors, complete with forged texts and receipts. The messages used my number, but the words were pure fiction, time-stamped during meetings I could prove I attended. At the station, Marcus tore the lies apart. My phone records, workplace footage, actual receipts, everything disproved her claims. Then another officer interrupted. We just got a call from CPS. Someone reported Emily leaving drugs around the house where children could access them. Marcus stayed calm. My client has had a restraining order for a week. The children were only here during the illegal entry for which the parents were arrested. Detective Raymond's phone rang again. FBI Financial Crimes Unit. Susan had reported me running an identity theft ring. Over 3 hours, we disproved every wild allegation. The detective grew furious at the waste of resources. We'll be adding filing false reports to her charges. As we left, my phone exploded with notifications. Susan had taken to social media, painting me as the heartless neighbor refusing to help the community president in need. Distant neighbors and acquaintances started calling. Marcus advised, "Don't engage. Let her dig her grave." But the smear campaign hurt. The next morning he called, "Susan tried to access your credit report again last night. Traced to her IP. She's not giving up. She's ensuring she'll face serious jail time." The scope was breathtaking. Forged board minutes. Fake police reports to FBI, DEA, IRS, CPS, even Homeland Security with claims of drug labs and cyber terrorism. Digital forensics proved every fake account and post came from her devices. The prosecutor built a RICO-style case, pattern of criminal enterprise targeting anyone she saw as vulnerable. My evidence was the cornerstone. Other victims came forward. Former board members she had harassed, neighbors she had fined into submission, even her own previous landlords. The local news ran the story. HOA president faces multiple felonies in identity theft and harassment ring. Susan was arrested again at a bank trying to open an account with my information. 6 months later, I sat in the witness stand. Susan and Derek in orange jumpsuits looked small. I described the fear, the financial cost, the emotional toll of being betrayed by the very community that was supposed to protect me. The judge sentenced Derek to 4 years, Susan to 6, plus lifetime restraining orders and full restitution. As they were led away, Susan stared at me with pure incomprehension. Even now, she couldn't understand why I wouldn't just submit. Outside, Patricia, Susan's mother, waited with Megan and Tyler. I had set up college funds for the kids from the restitution money. Megan hugged me tight. "Thank you for helping us anyway." 3 months later, I hosted a backyard party. Lavender I had planted with Nina bloomed everywhere, filling the air with calm. Neighbors, co-workers, Even some who had initially believed Susan's lies came to apologize. Nina raised a toast to Emily, who taught us boundaries aren't walls. They're the foundation for real community. That night I walked through my house, really walked through it. No paranoia, just peace. The sage green walls glowed softly. Milo purred on his chair. The boundaries keychain hung proudly by the door, no longer hidden. My phone buzzed with a message from one of Susan's earlier victims. Because of you, I got my money back. Thank you for being brave enough to stand up. I finally felt what I had been searching for since losing my parents. Home. Not just a house, a sanctuary defended by evidence. Law. And my own refusal to let an entitled HOA Karen rewrite my life in beige. The lavender scent drifted through the open windows, a reminder that beauty can grow even after the ugliest invasions. Tomorrow would be ordinary. Work, errands, life lived peacefully within boundaries I'd fought for and won. And in that quiet, hard-won peace, I was finally, completely, home.